Guys, Ineffa has been officialized by the main Genshin Impact account across social media, and I already made a video on her, but today I have an update regarding my calculations and estimations about her kit and how strong she is. Basically, what happened is that after I posted my first video on her, in which I said she's a solid character but nothing incredibly impressive, a new facet of her kit got revealed by data miners, and that changed things quite significantly. So, in this video, I'm going to analyze all of this and show some more team calculations taking the update into account. Just as a summary, Ineffa is an electro field character that can hit opponents every 2 seconds through a companion that stays on field while she's not on. So it works just like Fischl. On top of that, she's an attack scaling shielder, so she consolidates the role of damage contribution and defensive support, which is something that is becoming more and more common recently. Lastly, most importantly, when she's on the team, she changes the electrocharge reaction to lunar electrocharge for all the characters in your lineup. I will not be going into specifics about lunar electrocharge in this video, because in my past one I already went into it quite extensively, but basically while this changes the functioning of electrocharge quite a lot, it doesn't necessarily improve it particularly much. In fact, based on my calculations, the team-wide damage of the new reaction itself isn't great, and probably won't be all that relevant in the big scheme of things. In my previous video, this caused me to underestimate Ineffa, although I didn't think she was bad, just decent. But there is a new finding that changes pretty much everything. Before I move on, I want to talk to you about this new phone I got kindly sent to from Red Magic. For the past few days, I've been trying the new Red Magic 10S Pro, and I want to thank Red Magic for sending it to me and sponsoring this video. This phone is honestly a monster device from a technical standpoint, as it primarily focuses on its specs to provide first and foremost an excellent gaming experience. Honestly, its hardware will put many low-range to mid-range computers to shame, as it comes with a Snapdragon 8 Elite leading version, which is the best performing CPU for mobile phones at the moment and has up to 24GB of RAM. This makes it able to run even the most demanding games at high FPS and max settings with no issue. The one thing that makes the Red Magic 10S Pro stand out, however, is the cooling system. Basically, you can regulate a fan while using it, so the phone won't scorch your hand even while playing games of the caliber of Genshin Impact. But beyond gaming, the screen and volume make the phone quite versatile. The screen is beautiful. It is 6.85 inches big and has a high quality resolution of 1.5K. It also has a maximum refresh rate of 144Hz, so I found it really nice even to do simple stuff like browsing social media on this phone. The speakers are quite great as well, and so if you want to watch movies or anime on this device, it will do a great job. But still, at its core, this phone is designed for gaming, so I recommend it to you if you're interested in mobile gaming, as it will run pretty much any game on the market with no issue whatsoever. You can check the Red Magic 10S Pro in the link in the description below. Ineffa is a passive that allows her companion to unleash an extra AoE attack on opponents when the lunar charge reaction is active on field every time it uses its normal elemental skill attack. This attack will be of lunar charge type, so the elemental reaction, but as the base damage of the reaction, it will scale off of Ineffa's attack directly. The multiplier in the description is of 80%, which is what I personally used in my calculations previously, but apparently in-game this works differently. In fact, for some reason, the base damage for this specific type of attack is tripled compared to the description, so it's much more relevant than I previously thought. Now, why is this so important, you might ask? Like, yeah, 240% multiplier sounds good, but it's not extremely high. Like, by meta standards, it's not unprecedented. What makes it good is that the attack is of lunar charge type, a transformative type of elemental reaction, and as such, it completely ignores defense on opponents. Defense is something that always applies for traditional attacks in Genshin. It's a stat all opponents have, and abilities that reduce it are really rare. When they are in the picture, like for example Raiden's Constellation 2, the damage increase is however massive, partially because, again, it's rare compared to something like resistance reduction. So, for an attack this strong to ignore defense completely, it's quite a big deal. As a result, in my calculations, Ineffa went from just dealing pretty good damage for a shielder to being a shielder that does off-field damage comparable to strong sub-DPS like Yelan and Furina in their best setups. Also, something to note here is that pretty much all of this damage is AoE, so that's quite meaningful. And this really makes much more sense to me than what I thought before, because we recently got Escoffier after all, a healer that does that level of damage. Of course, Escoffier also has more supportive effects compared to Ineffa, but she also has more restrictions that come along with that, so from a balance standpoint it makes sense to me. What also makes more sense now is the Lunar Charge reaction being as weak as it is in terms of dealing damage. I was kind of puzzled about why they went out of their way to change Electrocharge if the result we got was barely any different in terms of meta value, but now it makes sense to me. I think the design here is for the reaction to be the enabler for these very powerful coordinated attacks from Nod Cry characters specifically. In order to get this consistently on Ineffa, you need to have consistent uptime of Lunar Charge throughout the rotation, and so it's hard to separate the two things in terms of value for the team. And so, while Lunar Charge itself is quite disappointing in terms of damage, it functions as an enabler for these strong attacks, and that's fine, I guess. The bad part about it is that this only applies for Nod Cry characters, presumably, and no other, really. While this makes sort of sense, because after all, if you don't have Ineffa on the team, you won't have the reaction at all, I'm a bit disappointed if that's the design, because the power of the reaction will be completely tied to how powerful the character's kit is, instead of being something interesting to analyze from a team-wide sense. In a way, it's not really that different from making a specific character strong regardless of the reaction, it's just that they're masking it this way to make it seem more appealing. Anyway, now, the outlook over teams is considerably better. But before I talk about that, let me remind you that if you enjoy my channel but you haven't subbed yet, please consider doing so because it really makes me notice your support. In my previous video, I only talked about a Chlorine Electrocharge team, and compared to that, the new version is quite a bit better in terms of team damage, solely because of how much more damage Ineffa is dealing in my new calculations. It's not a groundbreaking increase, but it establishes this variant as the best Electrocharge team for Chlorine at the very least, and makes it more competitive with her best teams, so the Overload Chevreuse teams. Keep in mind that Ineffa is an AoE damage dealer, so her theoretical value doesn't tell the full story. I think she would be a big help for DPSs like Chlorine who don't have impeccable AoE. I've also calculated a new Villette team with her, and it should be pretty good. I honestly like this more than some of the teams with Escoffier for him, because unlike her, Ineffa is, again, an AoE sub-DPS. So, while you're sacrificing a good chunk of new Villette's AoE damage by not using another buffer, you're still replacing that with good AoE damage. Also, Ineffa is a shielder, so if your new Villette is Constellation 0, Ineffa really becomes a comfort option that is only rivaled by Citlali at this level of performance for New Villette. I've looked at some Vareza stuff as well. Honestly, the synergy with Vareza is not optimal, because the latter benefits from having a second Natlan character on the team because of her second passive, which makes her receive a big attack buff when the team triggers a Night Soul burst. When there are 2 or 3 Natlan allies for her, the uptime of this effect is quite consistent, but when there is none, there are times where she won't get it for most of her window, which is quite a malus. On a Vareza Electrocharge team, the best setup is Yansan, Furina, and Xianyun, and you can only replace Yansan here because Xianyun's healing is needed for Furina. Ineffa still stands her ground, but she doesn't seem to be the best in slot for the lineup, especially if your Yansan is high constellation level. Lastly, I've looked at Aoife. Honestly, seems quite good for him, because Ineffa is a big upgrade to Auroron in terms of damage for the team, and also provides a shield, which will make Aoife much more durable as well as more resistant to staggering. As a side note, I want to point out that for Ineffa specifically on these teams, in terms of artifacts, I used either Tenacity or generic attack buffing pieces, and assume that when Nod Cry comes out, they will release much better options for her. We've already got a few rumors on the matter, but I won't talk about it in this video. What I can say is that Ineffa already looks pretty strong, but is likely to get much stronger once new builds for her come out, and more importantly, more Nod Cry characters get released. And with this, I'm done for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe, and also go check the Red Magic 10S Pro in the description below. Bye bye.